Members of the state's Legislative Climate Change Caucus gathered at the East Arlington Federated Church on Wednesday, November 13th, for a presentation and discussion of some ideas and legislation they hope to advance in the coming session scheduled to begin in early January. They also got to hear from members of the audience, who filled most of the pews in the church, who offered up a few thoughts and ideas of their own on a complex issue that defies easy solution and calls for some adjustments and what some would see as sacrifice to meet longer-term goals. Representative Sarah Copeland-Hanzas, who is a co-chair of the Climate Caucus, was the lead presenter of a legislative proposal the caucus has been developing to curb climate change pollution in Vermont. Other panel and caucus members included State Senator Brian Campion of Bennington County, Representative David Durfee of Shasbury, and Representative Kathleen James, who represents Manchester, Arlington, Sandgate, and most of Sunderland. They and their fellow caucus members are hoping to obtain passage of a bill known as the Global Warming Solutions Act that would cut polluting emissions, make emissions goals requirements, and foster innovation. There are four main pillars around which they built the proposed statute, Copeland-Hanzas said: accountability, transportation, thermal efficiency, and building more renewable in-state electrification.
It is a strategy to focus every single state agency on cutting pollution. It's going to be important because we need to take our aspirations that we've been missing, that we've not been reaching, and we need to put them into statute as requirements so that everybody has to come to the table and help figure out how to make this happen. And this accountability measure is really foundational to many of the other things that will also need to come in future years. So the accountability in the Global Warming Solutions Act is going to be key to future work that we do.
After each of the panelists spoke to the value of the proposed legislation, it was the turn of the audience to weigh in, and they followed the panelists with a series of questions and suggestions.
Electric industry in Vermont is not in as good shape relative to carbon as you might think, because all these solutions, and you hit on it, electric vehicles and electric heating rely on more electricity. And we've been fortunate, or the utilities have been fortunate, that the electric load has been going down. And it's been easy for them to meet their goals. But when it begins going up, it's going to be a lot harder. But my question to you is, has the caucus done any thinking? This goes to the ladies' discussion on costs. Have you done any thinking on the costs of not doing anything, not addressing climate change?
And I don't pretend for a moment that just because Vermont turns the corner and starts reducing its greenhouse gas emissions, that that's somehow going to save the world. But what I know it will do is it will give other states who have larger emissions problems than we do an idea of how to do it. And that's the reason why Vermont can and should lead on reducing our greenhouse gas.
Absolutely, about all of the things that we can do. Because the truth of the matter is, a state that is already 94% clean energy, that only has a population of 600,000 people, cannot contribute to decarbonization globally unless you think big and think with imagination and contribute to what's going on elsewhere. And if you do those things, you can have a real impact. But if you don't, what you're going to get is pushback from people saying, I'm struggling with the bills, why are you asking me for more sacrifice?
And I'm not discounting this climate issue, right? It's something we need to work on. But the question is, where does it fit in the chain of priorities? Because right now, I'm going to assure you, here in southwestern Vermont, we have a lot of priority. We have a lot more serious issues than whether or not we should all go out and buy an electric car. That's not the issue right now. The issue is whether or not we're going to have a school. We're going to have some of the major employers here, and I'm not sure you're familiar with Bennington. We just lost Energizer, and just 2 years ago we lost Fasant. Why? They can't get employees.
If I may just mention one thing to John's point. I think he raised a lot of good points. I do think that there is a connection between bringing young people here and renewable energy. I even see it at Bennington College. I see young people making their decisions around where they want to go to college, what food they want to buy, where they shop. A lot of those now are connected to renewable energy and agriculture and local. So I do think the more we do, we are going to continue to see an increase in terms of population. I also want to mention, we have started a little bit in this state to see people leave other states and come to the state of Vermont because they live in coastal areas that they feel are going to be or have already experienced severe damage. So the population issue, I just want to mention that as well.
We talked with Edward Cameron, a climate change specialist who worked on the Paris Climate Accords, afterwards.
The first thing I would say is that I think it's an excellent initiative by the Caucus. I think they're showing real leadership, which the state needs, and I think they're showing a real willingness to consult with local populations, not just listening to those who are supportive of climate leadership, but looking and listening to people who have some genuine concerns and some real skepticism. So I thought that the mere convening of the event was a success. I think they're also looking, for the most part, at the areas of the economy that need to be decarbonised. They're looking at transport, of course, they're looking at electrification, they're looking at heating. I did think, echoing some of the comments from the floor, that agriculture as a sector is vital, not only because of its emissions, but because of its capacity to enhance resilience and generate local livelihoods, and also enable us as consumers to reduce our own emissions footprint. So I think the lack of agriculture as part of the sectors they're looking at the moment is a concern. I would also say that the strategy development at the moment is focused too narrowly on emissions reductions and doesn't look enough at building societal and ecosystem resilience. And my own comment from the floor is that as we build a low carbon and climate resilient economy, we actually help to address some of the other problems that the state has. We help to create jobs, we drive economic development, we help to retain and attract young people to the state. And so I really think that the caucus, as it moves forward, needs to do more to stress the opportunities that we will benefit from if we do seize this moment, as opposed to always using the language of emergency.
We also had a chance to talk to some of the panelists about their reactions to the forum and what they were taking away from it.
This issue really seriously, and it's a complicated issue. And I think what resonated with me the most is, the turnout was huge, and again, people are concerned. But we also have to find ways to deal with this so it isn't, a huge financial burden on the backs of Vermonters. So how can we do this in a way, again, that all of a sudden, people's costs are going up so high that it certain things become prohibitive, and they decide, I can't afford Vermont anymore. And I think we can do that. I think there's a balance there, and I think we just have to figure that out. So again, it's a renewable energy economy. We're dealing with a huge problem, but it works for everybody, and people aren't left behind. And I thought the woman's comment about electric vehicles, they are very expensive. Can we do more? we did a little bit in the legislature this year to bring down the cost for moderate income Vermonters, and there is indeed a used market starting, but we need to do more. We heard that tonight, and I thought that was a really important takeaway.
So, what I heard from the audience tonight was a lot of people who have begun to use some of these new technologies and renewable energy technologies, and are feeling really comfortable with them. And I think it's discussions like this that will allow us to begin to share ideas with our neighbors. So if I'm not sure that I could drive an electric vehicle because I live, on a hill someplace far out of town, maybe I can have a conversation with my neighbor who's been driving an electric vehicle for a number of years and learn a little bit more about how that's worked for them, and what are the tips and tricks.
The caucus has been doing a lot of work on selecting the policy priorities that we want to move forward with in 2020, and so that wasn't my key takeaway tonight. My key takeaway tonight was how vital it is that we be having these conversations with voters, with constituents, with our neighbors. Climate is a complicated issue. It can be a very divisive issue, yet it's a critical issue. And what I took away from tonight, I think, really was the power of community and how important it is that we be willing to listen and that people are willing to show up and agree, disagree, put forward ideas, and try to help us all move forward as a state. Because if we can't do it together, none of the ideas that we have are going to work.
You can watch a recording of the entire 90-minute-long forum on GNAT-TV. For the GNAT-TV News Project, I'm Andrew McKeever.